Perfect. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this interview with Vanessa, who is an expert in pelvic health. For those who don't know me, I'm Amali, the owner of Lifespan Nutrition and its various offshoots. I'm passionate about pelvic health and people of any age because of its impact to bowel movement, associated nutrition, and quality of life. So I jumped at the chance to ask a few questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Vanessa with my first question. Can you tell me a bit about yourself, who you are, what's your background, and what is your official title? Because I always get this wrong.
Yeah, the official title, that's a good question, actually. First of all, my name is Vanessa. I'm a pelvic health physio, but we were sort of referring to ourselves, or still refer to ourselves, as women's health physios as well, because we deal with women through the life stages. So not just pelvic health, but also breast health and bone health and changes with menopause or puberty and or womanhood as well. So the little bit about me, as I've worked as a physio in many different areas, in acute hospitals, in the community, also in private practice. And for the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time in private practice dealing with pelvic health issues. I've also done my postgraduate diploma in pelvic floor and continence. So I've sort of specialised and branched off into that area. I also deal with children, so children's pelvic issues, so continence issues with toilet training, constipation or bedwetting, and day wetting as well.
Excellent. Now, there were a few things there that I had no idea of: menopause, breast health, bone health, and puberty. So tell us a little bit more about the types of people you treat in your practice. What usually leads people to book in with you?
Yeah, so probably the most common will be around those life stages. So the changes, if we're talking about women, it might be during childbearing. So pregnancy, usually during the first pregnancy is when a referral might come to me, or people might self-refer. So from their obstetrician or from their GP, or just wanting to get a little bit of a heads up on birth preparation or pelvic pain if they're suffering any sort of pelvic pain in pregnancy, or wanting to modify exercise as well. I'll then see a lot of people postnatally, so obviously there can be lots of changes with delivery, whatever way you deliver, there can be lots of different changes and the recovery required there. Sometimes the referrals will come through early in that sort of first 12 weeks, or a little bit later in their first sort of year, where people try to get back to exercise or might start to notice some changes that weren't there before. And then obviously there's another change as well around menopause. There can be lots of different changes. So trying to keep people active, trying to keep people exercising through life, for lots of different reasons. So you might have heard of that sort of, you hear it a lot, say 1 in 3 people wet themselves after childbirth.
Yes.
And that's something we can talk about later, but it's often one of those things that it might not be directly after childbirth, it might not be even 10 or 20 years after, but the 1 in 3 can go all the way through. So often it's noticed around that change in menopause, when estrogen drops off a little bit, and underlying weaknesses start to resurface.
Absolutely. I know that I get a lot of ladies who are going through menopause who come into the clinic for nutrition services, and one of the things I always notice is they're not usually drinking enough water, and as soon as I open that conversation about increasing their water intake, it becomes really apparent that it's not because they're not thirsty, it's because of the incontinence issues that they're starting to experience, and a lot of them don't think back to what could have caused it as well. So
yeah, that's right. So just sort of working through those issues, trying to find out what's actually going on. And the other thing I touched on there was breast health too. So usually when breastfeeding, some people have engorgement, mastitis, issues like that I help treat and manage.
I had no idea. That's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really, because I hear so many ladies on the mothers group saying they've got, continued mastitis, and we often think of lactation consultants and things like
Yep.
that. But I'll think of you from now on.
Yeah, well, lactation consultants are fantastic and they're really good as well, but sometimes you need help dealing with the tissue. So the actual lump or the actual blockage as well. So we use ultrasound mostly, lymphatic drainage, lymphatic massage, and like checking their garments and what they're wearing, that sort of thing. Yeah. So more the physiology side of things, and the lactation consultants are great at all the other stuff too.
That's excellent. And you touched on earlier a bit of continence in kids. So if someone's got a little one, I think I was going to ask about this later anyway. I'm going to ask it now. If anyone's got a little one who's kind of bedwetting, at what stage should they bring them through to you?
Yeah, so bedwetting tends to be something that can go beyond probably a normal sort of age. So we tend to accept it up to about age 5, maybe 6. And after that, we can help treat it doing lots of different ways. Sometimes it's nice to just get a check and make sure there's nothing else that's going on that's causing the bedwetting. And often we do a program and look at what the child's drinking and eating, and see if they're suitable for an alarm type program as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So the next question that I've got here is, I've heard from many postnatal mums that they've been told that they have permanent damage. I've actually got a friend who's got abdominal separation that's quite bad, and she said she was kind of left, whoever checked her, hopeless that it was never going to recover. But what does permanent damage mean? Does it mean that they won't get some improvement through working with you?
Yeah, so permanent damage is pretty strong language, particularly if they've not done rehab yet. I think it depends when that was sort of given. We expect that after delivery, any sort of damage, still needs rehabilitation. So even the tissues can still recover up to, we're thinking, maybe 2 years after delivery. And then it also depends on what you're trying to get back to. So sometimes the tummy separation or the dram, I don't really like using the term separation because it makes me feel like two things have come apart. But it's just often a thinning. So if you can imagine you've got your 6-pack, something that's really defined, the 6-pack that's defined, you'll always see in a really ripped 6-pack the line down the middle, that linear alba. So that's normal, and it'll always be there, at least about 1 centimetre, okay, before you've carried a baby. When you carry your baby, all your tissues stretch, and sometimes that sheath down the middle can stretch, okay? So it can stretch quite large if you're carrying twins or the way your baby is sitting. And we hope that over time, during your rehabilitation, it comes back down to sort of normal, or within normal. Yeah, so it can still be quite normal and functional at 3 or 4 or 5 centimetres. And it depends how you manage that, or if you have pain associated. Often people have maybe back pain or poor ability to control that, those abdominals when doing heavy work or overhead press and that sort of thing.
And would the little mum tum that everyone talks about be a sign that you might have something going on there?
Yeah, sometimes it's actually all the other muscles too. So the abdominals have not only just the 6-pack, but below the 6-pack there's your deep abdominals, and there's about 3 different layers of that. And in between that, there's layers of sort of connective tissue, which is like the glad wrap that lies in between each layer of muscle. And before you sort of expand and grow a baby, those layers are stuck together, okay? And when we sort of expand and grow a tummy, the layers all move. So you can sort of get a breakdown, we think, between the layers. So everything sort of hangs out a bit looser and is not as tight as before. So that mum tum might just be the connective tissue or the loss of connections, and it may not be a sign of weakness or lack of muscle strength. So it's sort of, the best thing to say is that everyone is different, and it's probably best to get it assessed if you don't know what's going on or if you're concerned.
Instead of jumping in and doing 100 crunches a day.
Yeah, which will work one muscle, but maybe you need to focus on the deeper muscles. We do know that loading can help bring back those connections and toughen up that connective tissue.
So that might be why what works for one person may not work for the other person, because we've all got something different going on down there.
Exactly. Yeah. We all have different bodies. So I'll say all exercise is pretty much good, but if you've got a particular concern that you want to get on top of, or if you've got pain and discomfort, you might need something specific
checked out. Excellent. So what are some of the symptoms that women can especially look out for that may indicate, say, a weak pelvic floor? And I'll change this. I was going to say abdominal separation, but I'm going to say DRAM from now on.
Yep.
So what are some of the symptoms that people can look out for that might lead them to come and book an appointment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a weakness in the DRAM might be that back pain. It might be upper back or lower back that corresponds with a bit of weakness at the front. It might also be when you sit up in bed or doing a sit-up that you see kind of your tummy peaks. It's not nice and flat and controlled. And you might be feeling a little bit yucky if a dog or a child sits on your tum, and it might just have a really thin sheath between, like you might not have much muscle bulk there protecting your organ. So you can feel a little bit weak and yuck.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that pressure as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really have much. You sort of got right underneath that sheath is your bowel. So even sometimes you can see bowel movements go through if people have really thin sheaths.
And so clothing even might be uncomfortable as well, wouldn't it? Like if it's sat in the wrong place.
Sort of more, you need more of a pressure, I think. Some people find when their cat walks over them or their dog walks over them, they feel like a bit more vulnerable than before. And then weakness in your pelvic floor, the common one is any sort of leakage, not feeling confident to jump or to run, or jump on the trampoline, that sort of thing. Also might be that you're not able to hold on for very long, like you're having to go to the toilet more frequently and feeling like you can't control that urge. And you might have, the other one is you might have more flatulence, so farting as well might be more common, or farting in things like stretches and yoga classes. Because the
upside down pose.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff just shows that there's a little bit of weakness there or a change.
Okay, excellent. I just thought that I had lost a level of shame and was comfortable farting in public, but
it can be weakness.
Issues. Yeah, excellent. Cool. So if someone had a C-section, does that mean they don't have to worry about prolapse? That's something I hear all the time.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. No, because it doesn't matter. Like, I guess one of the big risk factors for prolapse is vaginal delivery, but there's also a whole lot of other risk factors. So carrying a baby is still a risk factor, like carrying that load for 9 months, having straining and problems with your bowels, which may have been ongoing since you've been a teenager or a child, long-term constipation and straining. They are also risk factors, and sometimes it's just the way you are, like you're blessed with those genetics that are just a little bit more stretchy than other people. Unfortunately, that some tissues are just looser for the shape of everyone.
Cool. So it's still worth coming to get checked out and having a hunt around, even if someone did have a C-section, if they're feeling any of those warning things that we've discussed in the other question.
Yeah, any heaviness and that sort of thing. I think a lot of people also get checked postnatally by their GP or obstetrician at about 6 weeks, and I think we've spoken about this before.
Yeah, I know.
Emily.
Yeah, when I went in, it was more, I think we talked about last time, that concern, my GP, my obstetrician's concern seemed to be, as I think you put it, was my uterus going to fall out or not? And that
Yeah.
tick, no, it's not. So I got sent on my way without even having a physical exam. And I know a lot of mums throughout kind of COVID and things have been doing their 6-week checkup via Zoom. And it's been a bit of a concern with them as well around, well, no one's even checked me.
Yeah, and often it's like we have a different focus, I think, as pelvic health physio. So our focus is to see that the muscles and the tissues and all of that are able to cope with the function that you're wanting to get back to. So they might be intact, and that's fine, but whether or not they can contract when you need to cough, or they can contract if you need to jump or run, that sort of thing. So just looking at whether those muscles are strong enough to take the load, and even just the load of vacuuming and lifting up a child and all that stuff.
Again, I thought I was just a bit lazier afterwards, and maybe that's why I didn't have as much enthusiasm for vacuuming as I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's all about functionality. So functionality is a common thread through here, and we're also different. We'll have different levels of functionality.
That's right.
And that's what it will allow us to do what we need to do. So cool. So how does bowel movement play into all this? We've talked a little bit about, constipation. I loved what you said a minute ago about bowels and straining, something that might have even been there beforehand. So how does that all play into the woman's health?
Yeah, so if you have a look, I've got a pelvis here, so you can see how if I orientate you to the front, your pubic bone at the front here, you've got your urethra here where you wee, vagina entrance here, and just like here's this little bit of skin between the vagina and the anus, that's your perineum. So at the back passage here, you've got your anus and your anal sphincters and your pelvic floor, which are externally, and then the deeper ones here. So people often go, I thought you just dealt with this half or the front part, but definitely no, the whole pelvic floor, which includes the back passage. And particularly if we're talking about childbirth, you can have episiotomies, you can have tearing into this area too, which might affect the anal sphincter. You can have trouble with controlling your bowels, whether it be fecal incontinence or constipation, and that can be related to the content. So it can be related to the colon, or it can be related to the outlet, so the pelvic floor muscle and the control and how you control that. So we look at both. We look at what's going on further up as well, but also, particularly interested in how you're able to control that bowel movement. Whether it's quite surprising how many people are affected by issues with their bowels. I think in Australia it's around 1 in 8.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty high. That definitely surprised me, and those were people that had presented to a GP, but they'd presented to a GP not because of fecal incontinence or constipation.
Do you think that people don't realise they have an issue, that maybe what they're experiencing is just normal, or is it that they're embarrassed?
I think there's a bit of both. I think some people get so used to it, they've had it for such a long time, and there's definitely, they create lots of different management strategies, and things or you can put up with things for some time and then it gets worse, so that then you can't. But I think it's a mix. I think it's definitely not talked about enough because of embarrassment.
Yeah. Oh, I love to talk about bowel motions, so no embarrassment here.
Or maybe there's 2 types of people.
Yeah, me and everyone else.
Can particularly describe everything, and others that never look or don't want to look at it.
So when should someone come and see you, and what can they expect? Because I think I've spoken about seeing a women's health physio or pelvic health physio with a number of people, and kind of tried to prepare them that there might be an internal exam, stuff like that. And so what can they expect?
Yeah, so first of all, if you're ever worried that there's something going on or you don't know what it is, you can always ask your GP or send me a message and ask if it's something that we deal with, because often we can help. It doesn't always involve an internal examination. I like to prepare people for that. I think if it's going to help in diagnosis and help them manage their condition, then sometimes it's really useful. But if they needed a session to prepare for that or to be talked through it, we'll definitely do that. We can only ever work with what the patient wants and if they've given consent for that. So if everyone's happy, then we can do it on the first assessment, but sometimes it's a second assessment, or sometimes we can assess if it's a pelvic floor issue. You can assess it through clothing too, or through the real-time ultrasound as well. So it doesn't have to be, internal exam. There's a lot that can be gained from conversation. So I have actually learnt that during COVID, having to do a lot more telehealth. There's a lot that we can do just by talking through what's been happening, what your symptoms are, and what we can do to help change some of that.
Excellent. And I think that's a really good thing that you guys don't have to do that internal exam, because obviously with kids and things like that, we
don't do it with children. And if you want more detail around it, like it's not, it's, I've done a lot of them, so I could tell you what happens. It basically is similar to like a pap smear. Like I'll leave the room, let the patient get undressed from the waist down, give them a sheet, so they're all covered and comfortable, and if they're happy to proceed, often it's just an observation, so you just have a look and see if they can squeeze their muscles, if they can pare down. If we're worried about prolapse, we'll get them to push down a little bit, and then if they're still happy, and we always just check along the way, if they're happy to proceed, then it's just one finger in at the entrance there for a vaginal exam.
I remember my physio saying to me, release your pelvic floor, and I was saying I have. And haven't. Another 30 seconds before it had come all the way to rest.
Yeah, so it's good to have that feedback so you can learn what to do sometimes. And it's not painful. It's not like sometimes pap smears can be quite painful, or have you're inserting another instrument in there with a pap smear. So it is just a finger, and it is just feeling the integrity of the muscle and what's going on. And to be able to cue, like we use a lot of it to teach people, okay, this is how you switch on, or what you've been doing is good, but we could improve it this way. So that people aren't going along blindly thinking they've been doing pelvic floor exercises for the last 10 years and
I was doing them all wrong.
Else. Yeah, and it's common. Even physios do it wrong. So there's
so come and see
a study. Well, come and find out if you're doing them right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say before, I always kind of think about the internal exam as being better than, not as uncomfortable as a pap smear, but slightly weirder than a Brazilian wax. So
somewhere in the middle there.
Somewhere in between there, absolutely. So my last question's a little bit for me. So, because I've talked about my daughter a little bit. So when would you bring a child in to see you? Because I think as parents, we all kind of like, is there something we should fix or not, or wait, or what? What's the right time?
Good question. So it depends on the issue. I think I'll see children much younger if they're failing to toilet train, or they're hitting a brick wall, or they've been trialing toilet training for 6 months or 12 months and the child's not progressing, then definitely toilet training can help with some, like, come and have a chat and work out a new plan, see if there's anything else physiologically holding them back. Or maybe if they've got some sorts of sensory issues, like they might not have had a diagnosis yet, but they might be showing some learning difficulties, maybe learning like other tasks such as self-feeding or hand washing, things like that might be slower. So they might need a little bit more assistance to toilet train. So early on, so that might be around 3 to 4 sort of age bracket there. Parents are starting to notice it's taking a while. Or they're having lots of accidents. So wee accidents I'm not so concerned about, but lots of poo accidents tends to bring people into, because it's hard for the families to manage. It's hard for them to be looked after by other people. Lots of smearing on the knickers. So children are a little bit different than adults with their constipation, but smearing and poo on the knickers tends to show that there's constipation there. It's not just
I often see kids who are afraid to eat because they don't want to poo. Yeah.
So, and that can be lots of different things going on. But yeah, being afraid to poo is very common, and it can even be in neurotypical kids that have had one bad episode of constipation after being sick or something for a while. So the good thing with kids, as soon as they're back on the right track, they can, get better really quickly.
Excellent.
And a bit older tend to be for the day wedding as well, sort of around sort of primary school age when they're at school and it's starting to be an issue.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we've got today for questions. I'm all tongue-tied at the moment. So I've learned a lot today that I didn't realise that, things like breast issues and stuff like that would come and see you, which, it's so clear now. And with kids, the sensory learning and the muscle tone and feeding and washing hands and stuff like that are two things that really, really stood out to me. Stick with me. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for all those questions. They were great.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll have more. So if anyone watching this has any questions or anything they would like us to do another Q&A on, drop it in the comments below and we'll see what we can rustle up for you. So thank you.
That'll be great. Thanks.